Good day, everybody. In today's content, we digest Velo, which looks to be at a crossroads, and today's video will explain why. Nothing that I say is financial advice. Let's dive into the content. So simply put, this crossroads is ultimately being stuck between this channel resistance and this channel support. At the moment, you can see there's been multiple points of contact within this channel, and the last point of contact we actually had was on channel resistance. So based off that simple analogy alone, if Velo cannot hold support zone 1 at 0.012, then I think a rollover back down to channel support for a final point of contact on support zone 2 here at 0.011 is likely. Now, with that being said, support zone 1 here at 0.012 has been hit over the last few days, and Velo has seen, I think, about a rough 12% increase, rallying up towards its daily 20 EMA. Okay, which currently sits at 0.0139. Now, this area of support that we're currently holding is very interesting for two reasons. We have a key level of support from back on the 3rd of September on this support zone, and we also have another level of support back on the 9th of July, which is where Velo previously formed a bullish cross that led up to this 0.021 local high in mid-July before essentially entering this channel back then in July. So at the moment, as I said, the last point of contact was on channel resistance. If Velo cannot break through these EMAs and essentially run up to channel resistance from this point, I do expect there to be a potential rollover back down to key support on the channel support and support zone 2 before initially getting a large break. So what I think we're potentially looking at here is this is a 1, a 2, this is a 3 that we've just witnessed. Right now we're in a 4, and potentially we're looking to roll over for a 5 heading into October. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Q4 is going to be a very bullish sort of time frame for the overall space, but that's not to say that we can't correct into October and then towards the end of October start coming out of the neck of the woods. That is still a potential play here, considering Bitcoin is still on edge, and at the moment I think things are a little uncertain. So really and truly, what I'm looking at here, if the support zone 1 holds, if these early September lows hold right here, what we need to see is essentially run up into these EMAs, pull back for a higher low, and not lose support zone 1 at 0.012, and then attempt the actual break of this channel resistance, this white trend line. If we can start pushing up to 0.015/6 and then turn this trend line into support after breaking it, that would confirm continuation higher and that support zone 1 potentially has marked the low. However, as I said, there are still obstacles and roadblocks ahead, i.e. this 20 and 55 EMA, which does sit between 0.014 and 0.015 roughly. Okay, I think 0.015 is a very important resistance level to break. It's something that I've been monitoring at least for a couple of months on several different attempts on X, and each time it's been a bit tricky since we've actually been in this falling channel. But as you can see, what I actually mean here, again, simple support and resistance. Okay, channel support, channel resistance, channel support, channel resistance. Right now, the next point of contact logically, unless this support zone 1 holds, would be resorting back down to channel support, which does sit at 0.011 on this support zone 2, which is the previous lows from early June. And again, if you just sweep this over to the left, you can see there's multiple points of contact from back in early 2025 where we've seen points of contact on this trend line. So it does look like at the moment it's trying to identify a bottom, but when you are beneath these EMAs, this is where things get a bit tricky. And you can see that whenever we have actually broke back above the EMAs, it's resorted in resolving back to channel support. We broke back above the EMAs, but ran into channel resistance, and this is where it looks like now we're trying to resort back to channel support. So don't be disheartened if we do see one further rollover here coming back to these lower lows from sort of early June, and then actually starting to get the relief and bounce, sort of breaking out of the woods. Now, this does tie up sort of, as you can see, coming into October, sort of the 7th to 8th of October. So over the next sort of week or so, if Velo doesn't actually manage to break these EMAs, then simply, and rolls over, then simply look for support zone 2. Okay, and I think that would be the sort of theses that I'm looking at here. However, support zone 1 does have the potential to hold. I think it's important to watch Bitcoin here. As long as Bitcoin can retain its September the 1st low of 107K, I do think potentially this low could mark the bottom for Velo. But if Bitcoin rolls over and we see, for example, it's possible a pickup in Bitcoin dominance, which is, I think, in October quite likely. If I remember correctly, when I was studying Bitcoin dominance earlier this week, I think it was yesterday, which was Sunday, so not earlier this week, last week, post-halving years, October normally marks a local bottom for Bitcoin dominance, which means that there's the potential that altcoins still remain risk-off heading into October as Bitcoin dominance climbs, regardless of whether Bitcoin goes up with it or with whether Bitcoin depreciates. If Bitcoin continues to depreciate and Bitcoin dominance climbs, altcoins are going to be a lot more risk-off and are more likely to take a bit of a bruising. So therefore, if that is the case, this is why I would expect continuation back down to the downside. However, if Bitcoin can continue to climb with Bitcoin dominance, this is where Velo could potentially come in for a higher low and then go for the break. And this is where we actually confirm the low at 0.012 on support zone 1. So key things to take away, guys, is ultimately I still believe that support zone 1 or 2 here for Velo will mark the bottom before continuing up to our fib support block. Now, what I mean by our fib support block is essentially trying to get back from this 0.008 low in April back up to this 0.038 high of January in 2025. It's pretty simple. Okay, at the moment, Velo has run into a key level of resistance, corrected, ran into another key level of resistance, and is once again correcting in this falling channel. But nonetheless, the trajectory is trying to get back to this high from this low. So at the moment, the key fib blocks to get through sit between 0.015 and 0.022. Once Velo does mark a potential low on either of one of these support zones, okay, if it does get hit, then these are the Fibonacci's we need to see broken, okay, in order to start getting back towards this local high. So get this Fibonacci on, guys, okay, going from the low of April 2025, retracing back up to the January 2025 high, include the 0382 and the 050 and 0618. This is the major Fibonacci block to break. In fact, the main two levels we actually want to see clear is between 0.018 and 0.022. If I quickly remove this channel resistance, you'll notice that we've actually ran into nearly every level of resistance within this sort of correction. Okay, so we kind of ran very, very close to the 0618 on this rally here. We fell just shy. And then when we actually came back and corrected to support and had a bounce, this is where we turned the 050 into resistance. Okay, you can see we met the 050 as resistance. And then we came back to channel support. And then what happened at channel support is we ran up into the 0382, which is currently being met as resistance. Okay, so my logic here is to simply retrace back down to support zone 2 on this channel support and then looking for a major break to kind of tackle out of these key Fibonacci areas. So at the moment, this is why we're kind of caught between channel support and channel resistance, which, by the way, this is a corrective pattern. It's not capitulation. It's a corrective pattern. I think it's a bullish one because what we've actually had, it doesn't feel like it, but we've had this run up, and right now we're just in this corrective phase looking to mark the low before continuing higher. Okay, so I think this is a corrective bullish continuation pattern. It's just about trying to mark the local low on this retracement. So again, I don't want to try and pick the bottom because you get smelly fingers, but at the moment, this is what I'm looking for. Now, again, failing that, if we lose support zone 2, then simply you've got this wick low here sort of at 1 cent from June of 2025, and then ultimately you've got the April low at 0.008. Again, I don't see it at the moment, but please, guys, do keep in mind that if we lose these two support zones coming into October, maybe November, which I am expecting to be bullish, just keep the consideration in that, you know, not to be too fearful if it does come into fruition, because you're still retracing back to a key level of support and are above major support levels from which we broke out of in the past. So at the moment, this previous high here from February 2023, as long as Velo is above that, which does sit at 0.008, I have no concerns whatsoever. Now, actually looking at the macro picture here before I go for Velo, there's a couple of things that have actually occurred here that have spiked my interest quite a lot. And one of them is we actually have this macro ascending level of support, which Velo continues to hold right now. Okay, we have this ascending support level that Velo is continuously floating above. Now, the only thing that's actually stopping us from breaking out is this monthly 20 EMA, which you can see Velo has ran into twice over the last sort of year, near enough. We had a rally into it in December of 2024. We also rallied into it in July of 2025. So this 20 EMA is the major level of resistance. Now you can see that we're actually getting compressed between the EMA and this support. So we are heading into an apex here, which is where a decision will be made. Of course, there is the potential to roll over here, okay, and then go for the break, okay, which I think would be classed as a deviation. But at the same time, right now support is holding, and you can see that we're really getting squeezed into this apex. Now, if Velo does manage to break 0.02 and we get a candle close above this EMA, that would be a very bullish sign, especially in Q4. And I think that that would lead to the markup towards this 55 EMA, which actually only started showing data from sort of September 2025 on the monthly time frame. So if Velo does clear 0.02, which you can see we're sort of compressing between, okay, if Velo can come into the compression into the apex and get the break, then I think you're looking at heading to 10 cents, which is the monthly 55 EMA, and that also ties up with our Adam and Eve bottom target, doesn't it? You know, we go from the neckline of the Adam and Eve back down to support. And once you actually break that neckline, the target again sits very close to this 55 EMA. So if Velo does get this compression into the corner here and the low is already potentially placed, or even if we get a wick deviation and then come back up, I think once Velo does clear 2 cents, we're looking at pushing to 10 cents minimum, and then of course above euphorically to my 38 cents targets at the 0.786 Fibonacci, which we've covered so many times. So at the moment, I have no concerns. I have provided you with my thoughts and my updates on the potential crossroads, what could happen, either holding support zone 1 or looking to come back to support zone 2 to mark the potential bottom for this correction. I hope you've enjoyed the content, guys. From Chart Nerd TA, take care. Peace out.